Hi everybody, Gepwin here, and I'm back with some Kerbal Space Program. It's been a little while since I played it. I think some of you enjoyed that sped up video I did. This one's a little slower. I'm planning a more normal mission. This time I have a idea of making a two-pronged attempt. Well, not really two-pronged. I'm making a two-mission attempt to go to Minimus. Now the reason it's really two missions is because I'm building a ship with two separate things on it. It's going to be a normal lander on the bottom, and then I'm also constructing a probe body on the top here. Now, the probe is going to be a Kethane explorer. We're going to orbit the planet, search for Kethane, and hopefully find a good place that we can land later and set up a base. I did have a lot of trouble deciding how I wanted to make the probe exactly. I want it to be small and compact and able to, it doesn't need to reach orbit, so it didn't need very much fuel, but I really like to have extra on my probes in case I decide to do something else with them later on. And that really tiny engine on there is pretty fuel efficient, so this probe should be able to run for a really long time. Other than the probe, the lander is pretty well done. Well, I have to say so, pretty well done. I put a lot of fuel on the thing, used some of the new stuff I unlocked. 3 things of every kind of science that I have, being the Science Junior and the goo containers. Really, the biggest challenge with the rocket that I was building is that I couldn't put parachutes on the top because the probe had to go up there. I did do a little bit of experimentation with putting the probe on the sides, maybe sending 2 probes to scan more quickly, but I really had trouble getting that to work, so I decided to send 1 probe that's just on the top, and then I just used the parachutes all around the sides to hopefully give it enough power to land. Now the lander itself is really pretty standard. I gave it a very wide base so that I could land easily without tipping over. I always have problem with landing, so wider base the better. Then just all the science I could strap on, and the stage to get out of the atmosphere, I'm going to make an asparagus staging using some of the larger fuel tanks that I've unlocked so far. So all in all, it's not that complicated of a build, but I'm pretty proud of it for where we are so far in the career mode path. I think it uses all the parts pretty well. And of course I put the mech jeb on, because as I said in the last video, I am flying with mech jeb because I like to plan these things out. And now just finishing up with putting skipped a bunch of the build because it's a pretty standard rocket from there on. I did forget to put on some fins and the reaction wheels and things. I totally just put those on finishing up now. I didn't at all fly it before and crash and not make it all the way and have to rebuild it or things. No. Would I do that? Really? No, I don't think so. Anyway, we are off on our way to Minimus, hopefully making it all the way there without running out of fuel this time. I did try one where I ran out of fuel, but that was really boring, so I put it off camera. Really, going up is pretty simple. I just put an asparagus stage on the main bit and then had 4 solid fuel boosters around the edge. I didn't have my engines running at the same time to start off. I think I probably should next time. It just gives you that extra little boost to get out. It's I believe that's the Oberth effect. I can't explain it very well. I think Scott Manley has a video where you can watch that. He's better at this game than I am. He's better at this game than everyone. But the Oberth effect means that the faster you're going, the better efficiency you get out of your engines, basically. So if you can get a huge burst of speed initially, you're going to use less fuel. It's a weird concept to get your head around, and I don't really think about it that often when I'm planning these things. All in all, this ascent's going pretty well. I keep saying standard a lot. This is a very, very well planned out flight, I thought. With the mech jib transfers that I do later on, and the design of the rocket, I think this is probably one of my most successful missions to date. So, really, we're just waiting until we break out of the thick part of the atmosphere, and then we'll go into our gravity turn. With the asparagus staging, it means that we're going to get to orbit with a large amount of fuel. Now, anybody who doesn't know, the asparagus staging means that all of those engines are draining in a pattern into each other. The two on the sides are draining into the other two on the sides, which are then draining into the middle engine. This means that the ones on the edges run out of fuel faster, but then it becomes more efficient overall because the game works out the fuel consumption. Weirdly, it is a game glitch. It wouldn't work in real physics. So after that, we just get up to orbit. Nice circularization burn. Everything went really smoothly, and if we just watch the periapsis up in the corner there, it is going to even out into a very nice circular orbit right about now-ish. I did use MechJib to circularize my orbit because I get bored circularizing the orbit and going to whatever altitude and yada-da-da-da. That's why I have MechJib on this. I'm not hiding it. I'm not trying to pretend I don't use it. I use these mods because I think it makes the game more enjoyable for me, and there's less failure for you to watch me do. So going out to Minimus, it has a weird inclination. So first thing I wanted to do is match inclination with the target. It's not strictly necessary, but it does make for a slightly nicer insertion when you get there. I always like to do that with some of the weird planets. It makes your transfers slightly easier. So really, you just burn perpendicular to orbit to push it off kilter, and you wind up in a I forget the name. It's not elliptical. You wind up in an off-center orbit anyway. We were in an equatorial orbit, now we are no longer. Now we're matched with Minimus's orbit, which will make it much easier to transfer in a moment when we get our window. So this is the transfer burn. We dropped the last bit of our fuel that we used to get to orbit, and we are now on the lander fuel, which is not ideal. I was kind of hoping that the initial stage would get us a little further, but the lander stage has more than enough fuel to get to Minimus, land, and come back. If it was the moon, I think I might have had some problems because of the high gravity, but Minimus's gravity is so small that it really doesn't matter all that much. See, we've already used almost half of the lander fuel, and I think we have so much on this thing that we will be able to get there with no problem at all. So we have a very nice encounter. Let's see, it's a little higher up than I'd like to be, but I can correct that later on. So I'm just going to use Warp Helper here really quick. This is something that I really like to use, and it's definitely not cheating, I don't think, anyway. And I can just hit warp to the soul transfer. It takes me right there really quickly. I don't know why the warp indicator on the upper left is broken. It has been for this. It's been for this entire mission, and I don't know why MechJib did something to it. So don't pay any attention to that. That's not going to be any indicator of how much time acceleration is happening in the game. But if you have not used MechJib, this warp helper is worth getting for anything. I think there's an independent one if you don't want the autopilot functions. But you just hit the button, it takes you right to where you want to be with the time acceleration. You don't have to worry about missing it. Every now and then I'll accidentally hit the button too far, hit the button the wrong way, and I'll completely fly by my encounter and crash, which is not fun, especially if you haven't quick saved in too long. Now it's kind of nice, I wound up accidentally with a free return to Minimus, from Minimus here, so if I missed my insertion, or if I missed my landing, I would be able to get a free return back to Kerbal without using any more fuel, but Kerbin. Get a free return back to Kerbin without using any more fuel. But I just want to go in for a lower orbit. So, set up my lower orbit with MechJib again, just to get the numbers exact. I like to plan out, I like to have exact numbers. This is more of a Kerbal Space Command more than anything. I have not yet unlocked landing, so I'm going to have to land manually, which is probably my weakest thing. But I do like that the new MechJib in career mode makes you actually plan out what autopilot bits you're going to unlock as you go. It doesn't really tell you what unlocks, which is a bit a bit bad, but it does mean by the time you unlock something like circularization or landing, you've already done it a million times. Which is why I think that using MechJib in career mode is actually incredibly fair, because all it does is keep you from suffering the monotony of having to do the same orbital circularization every single time and doing it perfectly and maybe like messing up and screwing up your mission. This time you can just hit the button and let it go, which I kinda like. Especially on some of the longer burns that you get later on if you're using the fuel-efficient engines to do interplanetary flights. Some of those burns can take hours. I had a solar burn in one game that took about 40 minutes, so I was able to just turn it on and leave. A nice quick circularization of Minimus. Minimus's gravity is so low, and we're moving relatively slowly in relation to it with this really efficient engine, so really everything goes very quickly from this point on. Now once we reach our circularization, we're going to have to play with our nice little probe there, which will be fun. This ship doesn't have the capacity for doing anything with Kethane on it, so it doesn't matter where we land this ship. But I wanted to get the probe into orbit, and since I was already bringing a lander into orbit, I thought that having the probe and the lander come together would be the most efficient way of doing things. And now the next thing that I bring to Minimus, I'll be able to find a Kethane field. I'm not sure if that's the right term. The Kethane field, a Kethane patch, a Kethane something. Somebody let me know what the right term for a deposit. I think that's the right term. A deposit. So what I want to do is get this probe into a 90-degree orbit so that it's moving over both poles of the planet. The reason I want to do this is because the orbit is going to continue around in a polar orbit, and the planetoid, in this case Minimus, is going to turn under the probe, which means that just by leaving it in this orbit, it's going to pass over every part of the planet eventually. Now I did have a little trouble because the thing is way too maneuverable with that huge reaction wheel on it, but I'd have to use the smart ASS to kill the rotation, but I wanted to get it into a position where the sun was on those solar panels, which it is now. It's not the best, but it doesn't need that much power. It's got those huge batteries. So this is enough sun to keep it going. And now we can make a slow pass of the planet, and as you can see, it is mapping out on that nice new hex grid that they have for the Kethane mod, which I really like. It's much better than the old one. Now returning to our lander, which we've left in orbit while we went to mess with the Kethane probe. The lander, as I said, doesn't matter where we land it, so I'm just going to try to find a nice flat patch and ignore the Kethane stuff. Now I have to do all this manually, which I'm fine with. I try not to use MechJib as too much of a crutch. Like I said, I like planning, and I don't like doing the monotony over and over and over sometimes. But this is going to be a fully manual landing, so of course, go to my retrograde and prepare to burn. I'm going to need to find a nice place to land. I'm hoping for one of those large ice lakes, but being the way things look in the orbital map, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there, because I'm currently over one. So I wasn't able to set down on the lake. I would have had to wait for the lake to come back around into the daylight. I don't want to land on the dark side, just because that's it's really boring for people to watch, and this craft doesn't have any lights on. So I'm aiming for that kind of flat-looking mesa over there. I think it might be it's some kind of mountaintop or mesa. I don't know exactly what, but it looks flatter than some of the other stuff. I don't want to land on the hilltops, because those are going to be a pain to land on. But I think this looks flat enough, and also, since Minimus now has biomes for science, I can land here. I can get the science from this biome, whatever it is, hill, mesa, etc. Then when I come back and land in one of the Kethane deposits, which I'm hoping will be on one of the ice lakes, when I come back, I can then get science from an ice lake biome and have completely different sets of science, which will be very nice because it will get us even more science, and we will need some after this. I apologize for my chair. It's a squeaky chair, and I had to readjust a lot. Dang chair. I will get a new chair soon. Anyway, this is coming down very slowly, so I did time accelerate a little bit. Minimus is very easy to land on, but all in the same, this is one of the most perfect landings I've ever pulled off. I think all those bloopers that I showed you from the moon in the last episode really helped. I didn't crash. Legitly, this is the only landing I attempted when I was making this video. I would have put it in a blooper reel otherwise. So I'm pretty proud of myself. This is a near perfect landing. There's my shadow touching down in, let's see, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. There we go. Like my perfect countdown. It's amazing. It's as if I watched this before and still didn't get it right. Anyway, on the moon, Jebediah comes out to take some surface samples and plant the flag, which is of course the most important thing. And we have to think of some inspiring words. And this place is very green. Inspiring green planet of green. Yes, very green. Anyway, surface samples and EVA report from this part of the moon, which is the slopes. I forgot to check before. We landed on the slopes of Minimus, so later on when we're in the lakes we will be able to get a different set of data. I'm not sure how many biomes there are on the moon. Now I tried to transmit my EVA report and forgot that I can't transmit that far with a spacesuit, so I decided to just take another one and keep it. And now, just because it's always funny, let's watch me try to get back in the spaceship with Jebediah. I'm really, really terrible at maneuvering these backpacks in gravity. So, he hits his head, he falls onto the little science thingy, he hits his head again, decides to do a backflip because he's done acrobatics on Minimus. If you can't do acrobatics on the places, what is the point of going to space, really? Once again, we're hitting our head on the science thing. Incredible spin out. But he's up. He's back. Is he going to get in the ship? Can he make it this time? It's like a sports announcement. Almost. The new sport. Get Jeb into the ship. There we go. Finally grabbed it. And he's inside. Now, taking off from the surface here should be incredibly easy because of the low gravity. Unfortunately for me, it was too easy. Yeah, I didn't pay enough attention to my altitude, or my apoapsis rather, and I wound up with a really weird, wonky exit trajectory. I was trying to just go straight into an orbit to the left of the screen there, but it didn't work out. So after a lot of fiddling with my maneuver node, I wound up with a really wonky escape trajectory that will get me pretty close to Kerbin. This is the closest I could get with the weirdness that was my escape trajectory. And being that it's so odd, I am definitely going to let MechJeb handle it. I did make the maneuver node myself, though. Here's one I made earlier. I'm not very proud of that. This is why that I use MechJeb sometimes. Because when I make a maneuver node, it looks like that. So with this incredibly strange exit trajectory, we do get back out and into the Kerbin sphere of influence, and then it's just a matter of burning retrograde along our orbit and lowering our periapsis inside the atmosphere. I didn't think of it at the time, but I did have enough fuel that I could have landed more nicely, gotten close to the surface and picked a landing site more accurately. But as it stands, I just decided to go inside the atmosphere and just basically crash into the surface really hard. If I had something like deadly re-entry on, that would have been a huge problem, but I don't. So I can come to the atmosphere at any angle, and I can come in as fast as I want, and it does not matter. Does not matter at all. In fact, we want to come in fast and hot so we get that nice light show on the camera, which we should be seeing any minute now. Unfortunately, we are coming down over the water, but I hope I have enough parachutes to make everything work. I didn't collect the data and put it in the command pod, which I probably should. But last lander that I made had enough parachutes on the thing that I was able to touch down in the water fine. Not to mention the landing legs do take some of the impact. Even though it's in the water, they do hit first, which seems to help. I think that if your landing legs don't break off too badly, then the other things might not. I have seen ships crash where only the landing legs survived in the water, though, so that's not necessarily going to save your ship. It's just it's a nice little bonus, I guess, that your landing legs can survive. There's a nice island over there. If I'd seen that earlier, I might have tried to go for that, because that would have been fun, but like I said, I just picked a place and decided to go with it. Really, and there was our nice light show. Then some atmospheric effects. We're still going way too fast, so I'm going to burn a little bit of that fuel. We got a huge amount of fuel left, so I may as well use it to slow down. Definitely want to be under 200 meters a second when the parachutes open. It doesn't matter when they first open. I don't think that they can destroy the ship when they first open, but I like to get under 200 meters a second, just because then the parachutes slow you down a lot more, and you know that you will be at a good speed when they open fully. Which, at this point, it looks like it's going to be under 100 meters a second. It might even be closer to 50, which should be fine. I always worry about my parachutes ripping the ship in half, which I've had happen a few times. This time, everything turned out fine. We're keeping all our science on board. We are going down slowly towards a really wonky water. It doesn't like the time acceleration. Between the physical time acceleration and some of the time acceleration on the video, that water effect was just very strange. But there we are. Perfect touchdown in the water, didn't even flip over. I could have gotten out and gotten a little more science, but I don't think I needed to. We got over 600 science for this mission. We got over 600, so we were able to fill out most of the last tier. I need to go back and get aerodynamics, but I decided to go with the micro engines so that I could get some more fuel efficient engines and things. And now, just as a final thought, we shall return to our space probe over Minimus. I decided to just leave it running for quite a while here. Just make sure that it can get all the data that it could, and we can find a good landing site. So I need to double check what science I have available and if I can make a kethane extractor. But if I can, my next mission will be to set up a rudimentary kethane extractor on the surface of Minimus that we can use in future missions, and hopefully we will be able to set up a nice refueling station. With the low gravity and its relative position close to Kerbal, this is the perfect place for ships to refuel before we start exploring the rest of our solar system here. So I hope you've enjoyed. I'll be back with more Kerbal Space Program sometime. I can't promise you exactly when. These videos do take a little while to make. But stay tuned for other stuff. I'm playing a lot of Starbound if you like space games. One of my friends is teaching me to play Dota 2, which should be amusing. And there's a Hearthstone tournament that's going to be coming up with some of my other friends. So, all in all, lots of stuff's going to be happening. So, if any of that sounds good to you, subscribe, like, share, all those fun things. Follow me on Twitter, social networks, yada 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 yada. You're tired of hearing it. I know. But, you know, if you like it, subscribe. That's all I really ask. In the meantime, I'm Gepwin. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon.